Hello folks, welcome to my channel QA Rampage. I'm going to be your instructor for the Python course, and in this course you are going to need everything to start programming in Python. It is one of the most popular language and everyday people are using it to do great things like server-side programming, software development, perform complex mathematical calculations and rapid prototyping, and for production ready softwares as well as AI and automation. Now Python depends on indentation to define scope, such as scope of loops, functions, classes. Other programming languages often use curly braces for this purpose. So let's get started. Let's quickly look at the indentations, which is space at the beginning of a line of code. Now, if you look at this example, this line has an if statement followed by print, and the print has few spaces before the line, which means it is indented and it is correct code block. If you look at the other example, here I have an if statement followed by print, but the print does not have any indentation. So if I enable this code, it will give me an error. It will say that the intent is expected, right? So there's a baby symbol. Now just for example, I'll disable the code. So out of these two blocks, this one is correct and this is an incorrect code block. Now I'm using IntelliJ, so I've set up the tab to set 4 spaces. So whenever I press a tab, it just indents and adds 4 spaces in front of the line. Now in the section below, I've got variables and data types. So what I'll do is I'll run this entire code in debug mode, and we'll see how the variables get their values assigned whenever we are setting up these values in the variable. Now to run this code, what I've done is I've put a breakpoint here so that the code halts at this line and it waits for the user interaction. So this statement will get executed because it's a correct code block. So when I press F8 in IntelliJ, it will run this line of code, this particular line, and that will be printed in the console. So let's go to the console. So this has printed the line because this statement was true because 10 is greater than 5. Now we'll look at the variable name and data type examples. Let's go back to the debugger. Now when I press F8, so F8 is actually to run each line. So I'll press F8. So this creates a variable num with the value 1. It is an integer, so automatically it assigns the data type of the value that we are setting. Now this one will become a string, so name is a string and the value this program won't run with error got assigned to this variable. Now if you notice, there is a double quotes and there is a single quotes inside, and I've got another variable named 2. So Python prefers that you specify single quotes for the strings, but in these kind of cases where you have to have a single quote or apostrophe inside the string statement, you can use a double quotes. Now the print statement will print the variable value on the console. So we'll go back to the console and I'll execute these statements. Okay, so num, name and name2. So these got printed. Num was 1, name was this program won't run with errors, and name2 is mark. Now these are another set of variables which are legit, and these are correct variables. So when I run these statements, it will create these many variables and assign a value. So let's go back to the debugger again and see how these variables are getting created and assigned with values. So when I run these statements, all of these got created. Now let's look at the other section. This section is disabled because these are incorrect variable names. You can't have a variable that starts with a number, you can't have a variable that has a hyphen or a space in between. So if I enable any of these, they will give error. As you can see, these are highlighted by a red wavy symbol, so these are incorrect variable names, so we'll not be enabling those. Now let's go further to the next section where I have all the examples from different data types like string, int, float, list, tuple, range, dictionary. Right, so we'll go over these one by one in the debug mode. Now let's directly jump to this one. So when I run this statement, it will create a hello variable with the string hello friends. So that's how it got created. Hello is a string with this value. I can print the type of this variable, so we'll check that in console. So it says it's of class type string. Then I can print the value of hello, and then I can print the first character from this string. H got printed, so it starts with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the total length. To reverse a string, you need to use the variable name, and in the square brackets put double colon -1, so that will reverse the string. Okay, so you can see that it is reversed. Now there's another way I can set a number as a string. This is how we do it. You put a number within the str function and assign that to a variable. Now if I look at the hello, it was hello friends earlier, that was a string. Now it is a string, but the number is got converted into a string. Now I can print this variable as well. Now let's say I have a multi-line string, so I'll assign that to a variable. So I can do this by using three apostrophes as shown in this example. So this will assign the value. This is a random string in 2 lines into the variable hello. So we can see that the string has a /n, which is a new line, and then we can print this, so it displays in 2 lines. So this is an example of int. Int_var is a variable that I've created with the value 5. Now I can print the type of the int_var variable, so it will say that it is of class type int. Now this is an example of float, where I'm specifying 5.5 in float_var variable. And there's another way. If I say print float and if I specify 5 as a string, that gets converted to float, which will print the value as 5.0. But if you look at the float variable, it is 5.5. right? Now there's another example of a list. Now in the list I'm specifying these items. So a list is defined like this. You have a square bracket and then you specify the items. These can be string or numbers. So when I run this line, it will create a variable and assign the values. Let's go to the debugger. A list has these values, so it is of the type list. Items 4, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 items. So 0th is car, 1 is scooter, 2 is bike, 3 is cycles, and the length of the list is 4. I can print the type of the list. It will show me as the list. I can specify the first item of the list, car, so we'll print car. Then if I want to print the entire list, I'll say print a list. It will show me all the items. Now there's another way of specifying the list. I can say a list equal to list, and then in the round brackets I can specify a square bracket, and then I can also specify, so it will do the same thing. So when I try to access the first item, I can do so in the same way. Now there's another way of specifying the list like this, and I can also print and access the first item using a list and the first item, the 0th item. Now this is an example of tuple. You need to use the keyword tuple, and this is how we define the one dimensional list in a tuple. Then let's go to the debugger and see how the tuple variable got created. So this is a tuple variable of the type tuple, total length 3, and these are the items 0, 1, 2. So it's 0, 1, 2, and then I can print the values of the tuple, the first item. So when I say a tuple 0, that means 0th item. Then -1 will print the last item. Now when I say print a tuple 2 colon 3, which means 0, 1, 2, so it will print this, but it will stop before 3. So to stop before 3 means stopping at 2, so which means it will only print bike. So it printed bike. And then when I say a tuple 2 colon that means 0, 1, 2, and then anything which is after this. So it means it will print this. And when I say print a tuple from the beginning till the first, so 0 and 1, so 1 will be the stop point, which means it only printed car. So that means it is stop before. Here also stop before. Now the next example is another tuple which is defined like this. Okay, so here I specified tuple keyword. Here I'm not specifying tuple keyword, but it will be implicit. So I've specified these in the round brackets. I can as well print the first item, which is car. Now let's say I want to change the value of the first index. What I'll do is I'll convert the tuple into a list, and then I'll access the list first index, and then I'll specify a new value, and then I'll convert the list back to tuple. Now the other example is of the type range. I can create a variable range with keyword range and specify a value, which means a range will now have values between 0 to 5. So starting index is 0, last index is 5. If you guys know about for loop, it will run between 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 is the stop, which means stop before 5. Now the next example is a dictionary. A dictionary can be defined like this. We have a variable a dict, and dictionary is specified with curly braces. You have a parameter and a value pair. So you can specify a parameter, colon, and a value, comma, the next parameter, colon, value. And similarly you can add more parameters here. Now when I specify this variable, it will create a dictionary variable with these values. So that's a name value pair. So the first name is mark, which is a string, and automatically age, because it's a number, it will become age as integer number, right? I can print the dictionary. We can see that in the console it printed the dictionary like this, and I can access the first parameter by its name. So when I say print a dict name, it says mark. And the other way is to get using the get method. Now let's say I want to change the name of this key from Mark to Mike. So I can do that like this. I can say dict. I can specify the parameter name which I want to modify, and if you look at the value in the debugger, name is changed to Mike. Earlier it was Mark. Now when I print this dictionary, it will show me Mike. Now the other way of specifying the dictionary is using the dict keyword with name and value pair, but instead of colon, specify equal to symbol. Now when I run this statement, our dict will get created again with mark and 30 as the age. So when I print the dictionary, it will print me this. Okay. Now the next example is set. Now this is how we specify the set. Okay, so that's one way of doing it, and I can specify the set. I can print the set, so it prints me the set. Then I can print whether a value is in the set. It says true, scooter is there in the set. And when I say print cycle in a set, basically it is checking that whether cycle is in the set, so it says false. Now the other way of specifying the set is using the set keyword. This is how you specify the set, and then when you print the set, it prints the set like this. Okay, so it is not a key value pair, but it is just a list inside the curly braces. Now curly braces is also used for a dictionary, but for a dictionary we have key and value pairs with colon. Okay, now the last example is boolean, where you specify a bool variable with the value false or true. Similarly, it will print the value. When I say false, it will print false. When I say true, it will print true. Okay, now let's see how the if-else condition block works. So what I've done is I've defined a list which is of type numbers. So it has got 5 items which are all numbers. Now if I want to check if a number is present in the list, I'll say if that particular number 100 in a list, then print found 100 in the list. So this is the message which will get printed if this condition is true, which means if 100 is present in the list. So let's do one thing. I'll put a breakpoint here and then I'll run this code in debugger mode. So now the script is running. It has declared a variable a list of these 5 items. If you look at the debugger, it will say that the variable has been declared with these 5 items. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 are the index of all of these items. Now if this condition is true, it will print this message. So let's execute. We'll go to the console and we found that it is showing found 100 in the list. Now we'll move on to the next test, which is declaring these two lists. One is motor vehicle with these 3 items and the other one is other conventional with these 2 items. So these are all motor vehicles and these are conventional transports. And now we have declared these 3 variables, test1, test2 and test3. So test1 is car, test2 is truck, test3 is cycle. Now I've got a if else condition block where I am writing that if test1, the first variable in motor vehicle, so test1 is car. If car is found in motor vehicle, then it will say it is motor vehicle. If test1 is in other conventional, it will say it is of the type conventional transport. Else it will say it does not belong to any type defined. Now I'll repeat the same if else condition block another time for test 2, and I'll repeat the same if else condition block for test 3. So let's run these blocks one by one. Now first we'll start declaring these variables because these variables do not exist. It is still waiting for me to proceed. So when I hit F8, it will declare the list motor vehicle. Another F8, it will declare the other conventional list. Now it will declare these 3 variables. So these 3 variables are also declared now. If you look at the debug mode, it is saying test1, test2 and test3 are declared with these values. Now the first if block will get executed. It says if test1 in motor vehicle, test1, the value of test1 is car. So if car in motor vehicle, so this is true, it will say it is a motor vehicle. If you go back to the console, it says it is a motor vehicle. Now test2, which is having the value truck, it says if test2 in motor vehicle, I'll execute. Okay, it did not pass, it was false. So it goes to the else if. Now test2 is truck. Is truck in other conventional? So truck does not fall anywhere here as well. So this is also false. So it goes to the else condition, which is trapping it in the end. It says it does not belong to any type defined. So this will get printed here because truck is nowhere in any of these two lists. Now the third variable is test3, which is having a value cycle. Now we are checking that if the cycle in motor vehicle, no, it is not. If okay, now if test in other conventional, yes, it is there. So this statement will get printed, right? So that is how the if condition works. Let us now look at the for loops and the while loops. I'll run this code in the debug mode so that it is easier for you guys to understand. So I've put a breakpoint at a list. A list is a list of 5 numbers. So these are the numbers which we saw in the previous example. Now what I'll do is I'll use a for loop and iterate over each of these items and try to find if there is 100 in it. And if there is 100 found in this list, which means if any of the items matches the one that I'm expecting, it will print found 100 in the list. Now if you look at the construct, what I've done is I've used a for loop for each item in the list. What I'm doing is now I'm picking each item. Okay, so if that particular item is equal to the value that I'm expecting, then I'll print and I'll break. Now the reason why I've used a break here is, so when it finds the value 100 anywhere in the list, it will stop and exit out of the for loop. If I do not use a break, then it will continue till the end of the list, even if it has found the item before the last item. So let's go over these. Uh, I'll press F8. So F8 will declare the variable. So it will continue the execution, so it will declare the variable. So a list is now declared with these 5 items. These are the indexes. Now what I'm doing is I'm saying for every item in the list. So now the first item that is picked is 100. If X, this first item, is equal to 100, then it will say print found 100 in the list. So it says found in the list, and then it will break. So you see, the execution was quick. It didn't have to go through all the items. So it does not have to check 150 equal to 100, 200 equal to 100, or 250 or 300 equal to 100. So it does not have to compare all of these. Now let's go over the second example. Now this is month list, where I have Jan, Feb, March, April, May. These are the 5 months that I have. So if you look at this for loop, what it does is for a counter I in range length of the list, which means for this list, calculate the length, which will return 5, put that in the range, which means now the counter will be between 0 to 5, which means 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it will run for 5 times, but it will not include 5. Now for each counter value, put that in the list, which means month list for that particular counter will return first item, which is Jan. Then it will compare with the value that we are expecting March. If that matches, it will say found the financial month, otherwise it will continue. And then when it is found, it will break. Now let's go over this. So month list is now declared here. This is the list. Now if you look at the value of I, it is 0. So it starts with the first index. Inside month list, the first item is Jan. So it will compare Jan with March. So this is not a match. So it will again go back and increment the counter. The counter becomes 1. Now it will again pick the next item. 1 is Feb. If you look at this month list, the item at the first index is Feb. Then it compares Feb equal to March. It is not a match. Then the counter increments. It goes to 2. Now this 2, the second index is March. March is equal to March, so it says found financial month, and it will break. Now let's move to the next example, which is to find the square of all the odd numbers between 1 and 11. So we are saying that the range is 1 and 11 for the num as counter in the range of 1 and 11. If the number is divided by 2 and the result is 0, which means it's an even number, we'll continue, will not do anything. Otherwise, we'll just print the square of that number. So each of the number will be squared, and then we'll go on with the next number. So let's try this. So initially the value of one number is 1. 1 divided by 2 is not 0, so it will print 1 into 1 is 1. Then it will go to 2. 2 by 2 is 0, so it will continue, it will not go to the next line. Then we'll continue with the next number, which is 3. 3 by 2 is not 0, so it will print 3 into 3 as 9. So similarly it will go for all the numbers between 1 and 11. We'll keep on printing. Okay, now it has reached 10. 10 divided by 2 is equal to 0. It will continue, it will not print the number. then 11 is the point where we stop, right? So all the number before 11 it will stop, so it will not take 11 as the next sequence in the numbers, so it'll exit out of the for loop. Now let's go to the next example where we are again defining a month list as this list of months. Then we are trying to print each of these months. So what we'll do is for a month in the list, print that particular month. So if you look at the console response, it'll print Jan, then Feb, then March, April, May. Okay, so that's the end. Now we'll look at the other example, which is a while loop. So while has a different construct. It takes the initial value first, and then you specify the while loop for a counter, and specify a condition. Then specify the steps that you want to perform within the while loop, and then you can break out of it on a particular condition, just like you could do that in the for loop. So let's look at the while example. So it says the initial counter value is 1. While the counter remains less than 10, print that counter value. If the counter is equal to 7, which means when the counter is exactly equal to 7, break out of the loop, and then counter will increment to the next value. So you have to specify. In the for loop you didn't have to specify the next increment value, because automatically it increments by 1. In the while loop you have to specify the increment value. So now the counter value is 2, it's still not 7, it will increment and print, and then let's say we'll go on fast. So it has reached 6 is equal to 7 is false, it will not break, increment the value to 7. Now 7 is less than 10, so print 7. Now 7 is equal to 7, it will break and exit out of the loop. So guys, this was the end of basic Python crash course. We'll move further in the advanced topics like functions, classes, inheritance, file handling, and few small projects. And then we'll move further down the road to pandas, numpy, scikit-learn, and basics of machine learning to advanced topics.